Have a seat. Y'all have a good lunch?
Yeah, very.
Any further witnesses on behalf of the state of Ohio?
We do, Your Honor, but we do have a stipulation between the parties.
Okay.
Read it to the jury. It's the state of Ohio versus Michael Jason Meade, case number 21 CR 5052. It's a stipulation by the parties that the parties hereby stipulate that the individual, that Dr. Ann Shepler, while a Franklin County deputy coroner with the Office of the Franklin County, Ohio, performed an autopsy on Casey Goodson Jr., and it's the same Casey Goodson Jr. that was shot and killed on December 4th of 2020 at the address of 3996 Estates Place, Columbus, Ohio, in Franklin County.
So stipulated?
So stipulated, Your Honor.
Okay. You can call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Oops, I'm sorry, Doctor. Right up there.
Was that important? Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear, affirm under penalty of perjury, your testimony in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Have a seat. Pull yourself up close to the microphone,
Okay.
and you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Shepler.
Good afternoon.
Okay, for the record, would you please state your name and occupation for the jury?
Yes, my name is Ann Shepler, Shepler, and my current occupation
Yes.
is I'm a clinical assistant professor of pathology at Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist. Sorry, Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist Hospital in North Carolina, where my primary duty is as a forensic pathologist.
Okay. And could you just start off and just tell us your educational background leading up to you becoming a forensic pathologist?
Sure. So I received my BS in chemistry at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I then received my medical degree, my MD degree, at Wake Forest School of Medicine. That's in North Carolina. I then completed a residency in anatomic and clinical pathology, and that was at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. I then completed a neuropathology fellowship at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And then I also completed a forensic pathology fellowship at the Medical University of South Carolina.
Are you currently licensed as a medical doctor?
Yes,
Okay, and in which states?
Ohio, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania.
And are you board certified?
I am.
And would you explain to the ladies and gentlemen jury what board certification means?
Sure. So once you complete a residency and/or fellowship, for many of the fellowships, you will also perform a test to take to prove that you have competency in that area. So for my residency in anatomic and clinical pathology, I am board certified in that. I am also board certified in neuropathology as well as in forensic pathology.
Would you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what is a forensic pathologist?
Sure. So pathology in general is the medical specialty that deals with the diagnosis and study of disease, under which forensic pathology is a subspecialty of pathology. And forensic pathology deals with the medico-legal aspects of medicine, a large component of which is the performance of autopsies in order to determine cause and manner of death.
And what is an autopsy?
An autopsy is a procedure where we are looking at the body both externally, meaning the outside, as well as internally, or the inside of the body. We start looking at the outside of the body. We are documenting basic things like the weight, the hair color, the eye color, all of that. Any scars or tattoos on the body we'll document as well. And then, of course, importantly, if there are injuries, we're documenting the injuries, we're measuring the injuries. And then once that portion is complete, we will perform a surgical type incision on the body so that we can look internally at the organs. And so we look at all of the organs of the chest, abdomen, and pelvis, as well as the brain. And we're looking for any natural disease, but also injuries. So if, for example, there's a gunshot wound, we're going to be documenting the pathway of that gunshot wound through the body, through these organs. Also, we do collect certain fluids, bodily fluids, such as blood and urine, to send off to the toxicology lab so that they can run tests to see what was in the person's system at the time of their death.
And so basically, the purpose of the autopsy is to determine what?
The cause and manner of death.
Now, your previous employment, at one time, you were here at the Franklin County, the office of the coroner of Franklin County, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when did you leave the office?
I left the office in April of 2022.
And what were your duties there at the Franklin County Coroner's Office?
I was a deputy coroner and forensic pathologist.
All right. Now, let's just kind of go through a little bit. I think you did kind of explain that, but the procedures used in conducting the autopsy, you indicated there's documentation, correct?
Yes.
And you do make a report of your findings and the manner and cause of death,
Yes.
right? And some of those things would be photographs to document.
We do take photographs.
What other thing? You do x-rays?
Yes, for cases such as gunshot wounds, we'll perform x-rays on the body before we do the incision, and that's to look for bullets. It helps us locate any bullets or bullet fragments because we will recover those at autopsy and submit it as evidence.
Now, you mentioned that you also follow the path of the bullet through the body. You make determinations as to entrance and exit wounds as well.
We do.
Over the course of your career, okay, about how many autopsies do you think you have performed?
I've performed about 1,500 autopsies.
Now, as part of your duties here at Franklin County office, did you perform an autopsy on Casey Goodson?
I did.
And let's start with how did your office become involved, the Franklin County Coroner's Office?
Sure. So in Casey's case, he was pronounced in the hospital. And so the part of when they contact our office, I'm not involved in that particular process. It's usually an investigator who gets the call. And so, but the hospital usually will inform us of a death that probably falls under our jurisdiction, meaning it should be a coroner's case. And so they let us know, and then we coordinate the transport of the decedent to our office.
Okay, and then once the Casey or the decedent's to your office, what do you guys do?
Once we receive the decedent, or actually even before then, when we first get the call and we accept the case will get assigned a unique identifying number, case number for that particular case. And that will follow through the entire autopsy and all of the documents that go with that case. So that's the first thing. It gets, a case number that gets placed on the body bag. The body should be also received in a sealed body bag. And then we will basically take photographs of all of that as well.
And then do you make a determination? In this case, it was Casey Goodson Jr.
That was eventually, yes.
And how old was Casey?
I'm sorry?
Let's go to, how old was Casey Goodson Jr.?
At the time, so 23 years.
And what was his date of birth?
Date of birth is January 30th, 1997.
Okay, and what time was he pronounced?
He was pronounced on December 4th, 2020 at 13:10, which is military time. But
And what was the date of your examination?
Our examination was on December 7th, 2020 at 9:05 a.m.
Now, I know you go through a thorough examination. After you've done the identification, tell us what you do. First of all, was he, when he came from the hospital, was he clothed?
He was not clothed.
Now, tell me about the external. Is that the first thing you do, would be an external examination?
Yes.
Okay, would you explain to the ladies and judge what an external examination is?
So an external exam is looking at the outside of the body. Again, we're doing routinely for anyone just the basics like how much the person weighed. We call it a length because a height technically is when you measure from head to toe when someone's standing, but if they're laying down and measuring it from head to toe, that we call that a length. We will document everything from hair color, eye color, and then of course if there's any scars, tattoos, and then of course if there's any medical treatment, we'll document any of that. So if the person came from the hospital, they should leave all of the medical intervention on them so that we can document that. And then we will also look for injuries and document those on the outside of the body.
Well, let's go back to now specifically to Casey's case. Let's just start with the external examination. What was his length?
His length was 74 inches.
Okay. And what else did you observe?
He weighed 148 pounds. Just of note, he did have poor dentition, meaning his teeth was in poor condition. He did have some various what we call marks and scars, so some hyperpigmented areas on his skin and some scars as well. I did not see any tattoos. And then, of course, also when he was first received, he did come with some medical intervention.
Okay. And the evidence of injury, is that you look for that next? Or?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll get into more in your report, but what was the initial evidence of injury that you observed?
So Casey had multiple gunshot wounds. That was the first thing. I don't know how.
Yeah, some other minor
pathways where there is no exit, you'll see that it will go to a bullet here. So for example, for 5, the entrance wound is H, but it goes to a bullet in the left side of the chest. But that's just briefly, and then we'll go through it line by line.
Okay, let's start with gunshot wound number 1.
Okay.
Okay. Tell us what you did and what you found.
Okay. Gunshot wound 1, the entrance is designated as letter D. All right, that's what I designate as the midline, mid-back. Okay, there. The range is indeterminate.
Which means what?
That means I cannot determine how far away the muzzle or end of the gun was from the decedent.
Okay, now you say it's mid-back at the posterior midline. What does that mean?
Sure. So you can see the midline of the body is directly along the middle. And so you can see how it's very midline, and it's in the mid-back, mid part of the back here.
And in that, where D is, are there vital organs?
Yes.
And can you explain to ladies and gentlemen what organs would be in mid-back?
Okay, like what it went through.
Yes.
Okay, so the injuries for this particular gunshot wound included the skin, the soft tissue, several left-sided ribs. There were multiple vertebrae, so those are part of your spine, of the thoracic region, that's the middle part of your spine, as well as the left lung. And associated with these organs that were injured were a left hemothorax, that's blood that's in the left chest cavity, so between the lung and the chest wall, as well as there were additional vertebral fractures, so more spinal fractures, as well as hemorrhages that were around the spinal cord, and very small hemorrhages or petechial hemorrhages within the spinal cord. The spinal cord itself was not directly injured by the bullet. And then in addition, there was what we call hemoaspiration. That means there was evidence in the lungs that that Casey had breathed in blood.
So now when you spoke about the entrance wound, how do you make these determinations as what's an entrance wound?
So entrance wounds usually have what we call a marginal abrasion. So you can imagine as a bullet is entering the body into the skin, it's going to scrape or abrade the surface of the skin as it's going in. And so we look for that marginal abrasion or scrape of the skin. That helps us. You know, oftentimes entrance wounds are more round or ovoid, but usually it's that abrasion that helps us determine that that's an entrance.
Okay, was there any question that D is an entrance wound?
There was no question.
Now, then you went on to determine the exit, correct?
Yes. So the exit wound corresponds to letter A, and this is on the superior or upper left side of the chest.
And superior means?
Upper.
What else did you do with did you make any recovery?
I did.
Bullets or fragments?
Yes, I recovered projectile fragments from the upper left chest wall soft tissue.
Now, you'd indicated that when you collect evidence, there's an evidence collection procedure that you go through.
Yes, so we will photograph what we collect. We then will package up either if it's a bullet or fragments in separate little boxes or containers. Those get sealed, and then they will be submitted to the investigating agency.
And then then did you move on to determine trajectory?
Yes, so By trajectory, I mean how the bullet went through the body and anatomic position. You can see in this diagram, this is the anatomic position where the palms are facing upward. And so when I'm documenting the trajectory, that's giving a three-dimensional view of the path of the bullet through the body. And that's important because when I say, for example, the bullet goes right to left, I mean that it went towards Casey's left, okay? When I say upward, I mean towards the head. If I say downward, it's towards the feet. And then front would be the front side, and then back is the back side.
So let's go through your findings, and then we'll come back to the trajectory.
Okay,
All right, so how about gunshot number 2?
okay. Gunshot wound number 2 is listed as gunshot wound of the mid-back, and it corresponds to letter E here. That's the entrance.
And that's the mid-back.
Yes, so letter E is the entrance.
And the range, indeterminate?
Yes.
What do you mean by that? How indeterminate? You said that you can't determine how far away.
Right. I had no evidence of a close range firing.
And so how about injuries?
Sure. So for injuries, the bullet injured the skin, the soft tissue, the left ribs, multiple left ribs. Also one of the thoracic vertebra, again, part of the spine, the left lung, as well as the heart. In addition, this gunshot wound contributed to the left hemothorax. Again, that's that blood that's between the lung and the chest wall, as well as additional vertebral or spinal fractures, as well as hemorrhages around the spinal cord with little tiny or petechial hemorrhages within the spinal cord. And again, hemoaspiration or evidence that he breathed in some blood.
And were you able to determine an exit one?
Yes, so the exit corresponds to letter B here, and that was on the left areola, which is the tissue around the nipple.
Now, you've discussed in the other one as well that you have 2 gunshot wounds.
Yes.
So how do you determine the path that each one takes?
Sure. So when I'm determining the path, I'm looking both at the external where the gunshot wounds originate on the skin, and then I'm tracing them through the body once I've opened the body and looking at the organs and tracing those pathways through the organs. And then that gives me the pathway either to a bullet or to an exit.
Now, there was some medical intervention before Casey came to your possession.
He did, yes.
Did that affect or anything in determining the path of the bullets?
Nothing of significance. He did have what we call a thoracotomy incision on the left side of the chest, and that just means it's an incision that was made through the skin and between the ribs on the left side, but it did not significantly affect my ability to trace the trajectory.
Now, to trace it, is it something that you're looking at and you can see the path?
Yes.
The body's opened up?
Yes, I'm looking for any injuries through the organs and lining them up with the entrance wounds, and then if there's an exit wound.
Now, we discussed what entrance wounds look like. What about exit wounds?
So exit wounds do not typically have a abrasion. So we talked about for entrance wounds, when the bullet enters, it scrapes the skin and gives that abrasion. For exit wounds, you don't have that abrasion because it's basically going out, through the skin. And so when we don't see an abrasion, that's a clue. But Also, sometimes the wounds can what we call reapproximate. So if you push the skin together, it closes back up versus a nice round or ovoid hole like we see in entrance wounds.
And in this case, the trajectory of a gunshot wound number 2?
Yes, so again, through the body, this was back to front, right to left, and upward.
Now let's move to your next finding, gunshot wound number 3.
So
Go ahead.
gunshot wound number 3 is the gunshot wound of the left side of the back, and it is designated as F here.
That's the entrance.
That's the entrance, F. Again, indeterminate range. And then its exit is the letter C over here, and that's on the left side, very lateral side of the chest. Meaning I'm sorry,
To the front.
to the front, but also it's a little bit more lateral.
And did you determine the trajectory of that?
Yes,
And what was that one?
that was back to front, slightly upward, and slightly right to left.
Let's move to gunshot wound number 4.
All right, gunshot wound number 4 is the tangential gunshot wound of the inferior left side of the back,
What do you mean by inferior?
lower.
And so what were you able to determine an entrance wound?
So tangential wounds mean that as the bullet strikes the skin, it then also goes a little deeper into the soft tissues like the fat or muscle, but it doesn't go any deeper than that. So it does not actually go into the body cavities itself. It's more of kind of scraping along. And that's what G is here on his left side of his back, on the lower part of the back.
That's why we don't see anything on the front view, because there was no front entry there.
There's no entry on the front.
Okay, and what was the trajectory of that?
That was right to left and upward.
And we'll get back, we're going to discuss more on that later on. A gunshot wound number 5.
Gunshot wound number 5 is the gunshot wound of the inferior right side of the back, and it's designated as H here, and that's the entrance.
So the entrance is in the back, and how about the exit wound?
There is no exit wound.
And where did that bullet end up?
That bullet ended up on the left side of the chest. It was about here.
Okay. And I think you're going to show us that you can actually see the bullet under the skin that was still there.
Yes.
All right, well, tell us what type of injuries did he sustain from that?
Sure. So this bullet entered the skin, soft tissue, again the spine, but this time the lumbar spine. So that's the lower part of your back spine. The small bowel, the pancreas, the liver, the diaphragm, and the left lung. And this also caused or was associated with some hemorrhages or bleeding around the spinal cord, as well as little hemorrhages in the spinal cord itself. The spinal cord was not directly penetrated or perforated by the bullet, but there were also associated soft tissue hemorrhage. Hemorrhage just means blood around the right adrenal gland, which sits right above the kidney. As well as gastric mucosal hemorrhage, so gastric meaning stomach, so some bleeding in that tissue of the stomach. And then intestinal leakage, just meaning since the bullet injured the small bowel, which is part of your intestines, you can get some leakage from that because there's a hole in it. And then as well, a left rib fracture.
Did you notice anything when you looked at the liver? Is there anything that you noticed?
I did notice that there really wasn't any significant bleeding of the, or hemorrhage of the liver.
So there was less blood than what you would expect?
Yes.
Could that have anything to do with the gunshot number 2 that hit his heart? And what part of the heart did it hit?
So gunshot wound number 2, which again relates to, yeah. So again, this is where the chart over here helps. Hold on. So gunshot wound number 2, the entrance was E and the exit was B. And so that particular gunshot wound, when it went through the heart, it went through the left ventricle of the heart. And that's actually a major part of the heart. It's the major pump, basically, of the heart, where that helps pump all the blood to the rest of your body. And so Casey, when this bullet went through his heart, it significantly injured the left ventricle. And that would have made it very difficult to actually pump blood to the rest of the body.
Let's move to, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know if we finished that. Did you tell us the trajectory of that?
All right, so going back to H. Since I recovered a bullet on the left side of the chest here, the trajectory was back to front, right to left, and upward.
Let's move forward to gunshot wound number 6. Could you?
Yes. Gunshot wound number 6 is gunshot wound of the right buttock. It is designated for the entrance as letter I on the right buttock.
Okay. And can you explain, all these wounds were indeterminate as far as range, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So how about injuries from gunshot wound number 6?
Sure. For gunshot wound number 6, the injuries included the skin, the soft tissue, the right ischial spine. That's not to be confused with the spine. This particular part of the body is actually part of the pelvis. So it's a bony part of the pelvis that was injured. And then the small bowel and the urinary bladder. Associated findings were intestinal and urinary bladder leakage. So since the bladder and the small bowel had holes, you get a little bit of leakage of the contents out from those.
And again, the trajectory?
The trajectory went back to front, right to left, and upward. Since a bullet was recovered about here, which is the left side of the abdomen.
Now, it appears that in all 6 gunshot wounds, they were all back to front, right? And an upward trajectory. When you say upward trajectory, could you explain to us what that means?
It means the bullet was going towards the head of the body.
Up,
Upward.
as
Yeah.
opposed to going down.
Right.
Okay. Now, you said that you had recovered, oh, there's a couple other injuries that you've noted. You said there were fragment type injuries. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So they're not depicted in this diagram, but we will see them in the photos. But all along, mainly the back, but also on the buttocks and the left arm, there were multiple superficial defects of the skin, and really the superficial or the really like the not deep parts of the soft tissues. And they were multiple of them, and they were small, scattered about.
Okay, and then also some additional minor injuries. What were those?
Yeah, so there were also abrasions or scrapes of the forearms, the left elbow, and the left hand, as well as a contused superficial laceration. That just means a bruised, very superficial or not deep tear of the left forearm.
Okay, and then what what projectiles were recovered from the body?
From the, I'm sorry, what?
From the body, what projectiles were recovered?
The intact,
Yeah, bullets.
okay. The more intact bullets recovered included, you can see in the chart, from the left side of the chest and the left side of the abdomen.
So Dr. Wright, so we can maybe put a little bit more context to all this. You performed or you prepared another chart that would indicate, maybe explain some of the pathways of the bullet, is that correct?
Yes.
It's exhibit number, what did you say?
6K.
6K? Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. And did you prepare that?
Yes.
And would you explain to ladies and gentlemen the treaty that will publish it, what that is?
So these are basically side view diagrams to show the trajectories of the bullet pathways.
And these, it's a fair and accurate depiction of what your findings were, the pathways of the bullets?
Yes.
Side by side. Maybe well. Okay, there we go. So you've described the first diagram. Can you explain to us what the second one is?
Yes. Again, so we're seeing side views. So this would be, the left side, and then this is the right side of the body.
Right. When you talk about an entrance wound going from right to left, what does that mean? Which side's right and which side's left?
Sure. So when I mean right to left, I mean from Casey's right to his left, on himself.
And you've got this, it's the same correlation of D to A to B, all that's the same for both.
Yes. Yeah, they're all labeled.
All right, let's back up a little bit, okay? And let's go back to gunshot number 1. And you spoke about the trajectory, okay?
Mhm.
It looks like all of them had an upward trajectory, correct?
Yes.
It will show us what where gunshot number 1's trajectory is.
Here it is labeled with a 1 here, and you can see the exit A there.
Okay. Again, that was entrance wounds from the back.
Yes.
Okay, the exit wounds at A there. Okay. How about the gunshot number 2?
Gunshot wound 2 is this lower line here, going from the back to the chest through letter B.
And gunshot number 3?
Gunshot wound 3 goes through, it enters F, and then it exits C. So you can see, again, it's going from the back into and then to the left side of the chest.
And why don't you show it on the other side too, where we're looking
Yeah.
at?
So F and C.
And gunshot number, what are we on? 4?
So gunshot wound 4 is with letter G. That's that tangential gunshot wound that you can see over here, but it's going basically upward as well.
Much more extreme angle upward than what the other 3 were.
It does go more upward.
And then gunshot number 5?
Gunshot wound 5 relates to the entrance of the right side of the back, letter H. And so you can see the upward trajectory as well on this wound.
Much steeper than 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
And then gunshot wound number 6.
Gunshot wound 6 is the gunshot wound of the right buttock. And again, a bullet was recovered from the left side of the abdomen. So, but this is the trajectory from the side view.
Now, did you notice when you looked at the entrance runs, did you notice anything unusual that you normally see?
Yes.
And could you explain to the ladies and gentlemen jury what that's about?
So in my report, I described all of the wounds as atypical, and that's because all the entrance wounds were much larger and had a more irregular border than we typically see.
And you have you say it's more than typical, Steve. Why would that be?
Why would I see an atypical?
Something that's atypical that's larger than.
Sure. Well, in addition to those wounds, we also had those more superficial, smaller defects of mainly the back. And so that combination of the atypical wounds, entrance wounds, and all those small little fragment type defects essentially looks like all of these went through what we call an intermediary object. So basically, before they entered Casey, so they went through something before they entered his backside.
And would you expect to see entrance wounds like that, such as they went through a storm door, metal portion of a storm door like that,
They could, yes.
as well as through glass?
Yes.
And you're talking about fragments, or those, tell us about that. When a bullet or a projectile goes through another object, what happens and what causes that larger one?
So when a bullet goes through an intermediary object, the bullet could start to basically break apart. And so you might get little fragments that then occur and come out. But also, since the bullet goes through something, it also destabilizes the bullet a little bit. And so that gives the wounds a more atypical appearance as well.
And are you aware whether or not if the bullet passes through an intermediary object, does it affect the trajectory, or could it affect?
That I can't say. It depends on other factors, yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me, can we put up the, oh, here I got it. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as state's exhibits. Gary. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not publishing right now, Judge.
Okay.
I'm going to show you what's marked as state's exhibits, 6M through 6Q. Could you look through those for me? Do you recognize what those are?
I do.
And what are those?
Those are photographs taken at the autopsy.
before we get to that, you indicated that you had recovered a number of items to collect for evidence. Is that correct?
Yes,
Do you have a list of what?
I do not.
All right, well, let me grab the property slip here. Let me see. This may refresh your recollection. When you collect bullets and fragments, what's the procedure? You package them, and then do you initial, or what do you do?
Yes, so they're packaged, and then I will sign the box with my initials and date it.
And then it's turned over to the Columbus Police Department.
Whoever the investigating agency is, in this case, it was the Columbus Police.
And can you tell me what items were collected? And you can refer to your report.
Okay.
Let's start. Why don't you start with, was anything collected from gunshot wound number 1?
Yes, so, gunshot.
Uh-oh.
Oh, it's back.
There we go.
Okay. All right, gunshot wound number 1, again, relates to D, the midline mid-back, with the exit wound of A on the left side of the chest here. And for recovery, I did recover projectile fragments from the upper chest wall soft tissue. So tissue like the fat and the muscle of the chest wall.
Okay. And let's go to the next gunshot number 2, and if you show us where it is on your diagram,
Sure.
your chart.
So gunshot wound 2, again, is that mid-back, as designated by letter E, entrance wound that exits B over here on the left side of the chest, near the nipple. For that wound, on my report, I say for recovery, see additional recovery. And I have a separate bullet point for additional recovery, which includes a projectile fragment that was recovered from the left pleural cavity. It's the same thing as the left chest cavity. And the reason I did that is as far as for gunshot wounds 1 and 2, both went through the left chest cavity, and so I could not determine where that fragment came from. It could have been from either gunshot wound or 2.
Because you've already explained that sometimes when a bullet enters, it can fragment.
It can fragment in the body, yes, as well.
Did that interfere in any way your ability to trace the path of the bullet?
No.
All right. And were those collected?
Those were collected, yes.
All right, what's the next?
Gunshot wound number 3. It relates to the gunshot wound of the left side of the back here, designated as letter F, with the exit wound of the lateral left side of the chest, designated as letter C. And recovery from that gunshot wound included fragment from the chest wall soft tissue, but more on that lateral side of the chest on the left.
And lateral means?
To the side.
Okay. Now, that wound, C, is that to the front of the body, correct?
It's front, but also a little bit on the actual side.
Well, if I was facing you, would you see the wound?
You could see it.
All right. And then we've got gunshot wound number 4.
Gunshot wound number 4, yeah, is letter G, and there was no recovery from that.
Okay. And that's because it didn't enter the body.
Right. Yes.
gunshot wound number 5.
Right. That is the right side of the back entrance, letter H, which went, the bullet went through and up into the tissue just under the skin of the left side of the chest over here. And I recovered a projectile as well as a little fragment of the projectile.
And that was collected and preserved for
Yes,
law enforcement. All these were, correct?
correct.
And then let's go to the gunshot wound number 6.
All right, gunshot wound 6 is the right buttock entrance, letter I. And that bullet went through and was recovered on the left side of the abdomen here. And again, it was a projectile and then a projectile fragment that was recovered from that area.
May I approach her?
You may.
Okay, doctor, I'm going to hand you evidence bag. It's got a lot of boxes in here. Could you go through those? Let's start with, let's just go ahead and take them out.
Okay,
We have gloves over there.
Yeah,
gloves,
they're,
Your Honor, if I may, we would stipulate that those are all the items that she
We're good.
recovered and put in and signed her name.
well, let's just go through them real quick.
Okay. okay.
If you want to grab one right there. They're in the sealed boxes.
Heavy. It's really huge. Okay. How do you want me to open this here? Oh, it's open. It's open. Okay. All right.
With, is it that A?
All right. Yes. Fragments from. Oh, A.
Just go ahead and take them all.
Okay. I don't know.
We need a number.
Yeah, they're each one,
Okay.
each box.
Okay.
And are all those how you would have packaged them at the coroner's office?
Yes.
Okay, explain that packaging there. It has some initials on it, or your initials on there?
Yes. My initials and the date are on here.
And what's the date?
The 7th of December, 2020.
All right, let's start with A.
Okay. A is projectile from chest.
Which one's that?
That would correspond to, I don't know if I can get this, gunshot wound number 5.
All right, you just
Okay. All right, 6B is projectile from abdomen. That corresponds to gunshot wound 6, the one to,
sorry, let's back up. That first one was 6A,
yes.
okay, and then 6B.
6B is projectile from abdomen, and it corresponds to gunshot wound number 6.
Show which one's that up there, if you can show. That one did not exit the body, correct?
Correct. That corresponds to the entrance of the right buttock, and it was recovered on the left side of the abdomen. And then
6C,
6C is a fragment from external left leg. So this, when we opened up the body bag, there was a piece of a gray metal fragment that was not inside the body or inside a wound. It was just basically loosely on his leg, and that's what that is.
okay. So that wasn't interior or anything, it looks like it was
Right.
just loose in the bag.
Right.
And you would collect that anyway?
We would, if it's in the bag.
Does it appear to be associated with the, or you're not?
I don't know what it is associated with, but.
Okay, and then with 6D,
All right, 6D is fragments from back. And that
show that one.
that actually corresponds to those smaller defects of the back that we talked about, that when the bullets were going through the door and fragmenting and then hitting, which those could represent the bullets that fragment, or it could be parts of the door and glass. So,
Or the screen.
right.
That's why you collected it.
We collected those, yes.
And then 6E,
E. 6E is additional fragments from left upper chest. That relates to gunshot wound number 1, which is again D to A here. And then 6F is fragment from left pleural cavity. Again, we talked about the additional recovery where there's a fragment in the left pleural or chest cavity, and it could relate to either gunshot wound, D or E, because both went through the chest, on the left chest. And then 6G is fragment from right pelvis. So that actually relates to gunshot wound number 5. So it is H here. So as it's going up, there was a little fragment from the musculature or muscle of the right pelvis that was collected as well. And then 6I is fragment from lateral chest, and that corresponds to the fragment recovered related to gunshot wound number 3, which is the entrance is F and the exit is C. And then 6H is fragment from left upper chest. This was just an additional fragment recovered from gunshot wound number 1 that went from the entrance of D on the midline, mid-back, and then exited here on A on the left side of the chest.
and are those boxes appear to be the boxes that you put the evidence in, and they're all signed by you and dated?
Yes, they appear to be.
And it deals with this case number, your case number, corresponds with your case number
Yes.
for Casey Goodson Jr.
They're labeled John Doe, but they have the case number.
Yeah.
You want these back?
And they have a trash can right here.
Okay, thanks.
And those were all turned over to the law enforcement, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, Doctor, Your Honor, I think we're going to publish some of the other photos that might be fairly graphic. They are graphic. If you could make sure that the live stream's off.
It is. I don't know if those, is it just? Okay.
Okay, Doctor, yeah, I previously had you identify 6M through 6Q. Do I have to get? Yeah, I'm just going to do the first. Or do you have it all? Yeah, right, that's why I was going to. The first one, I just need the Elmo. Okay, this 6M, what is that?
This is the outside, a picture of the outside of the body transport bag with that unique identifying number assigned to Casey's case, which is 20-5315.
When you first got Casey, they labeled him as a John Doe,
They did.
and then you eventually determined who he was.
Yes, they identified him by fingerprints.
Oh. Okay. Going to first put up six in. Can you identify that photo?
Yes, so this is a photo of Casey's head and chest and upper arms, the front view of it. And you can see in the middle there is a little card that has his unique identifying number. It also has a ruler on it, just for purposes of seeing how, where all of these are in relation to each other, all the different things in the picture. Then we have some medical intervention. So you can see on the upper right chest is a catheter going into the chest, and then down below the card is a thoracotomy incision. That's that incision that the hospital made between the ribs on the left side, which is a common thing that they will do for gunshot wound cases to look for injuries that they can, they try to save their life if they can. You can also see in this photo to the upper left part of the card, or Casey's left, but I guess to the right of the picture is, yeah, there. Oh, yeah, I can point. I forgot about that. Here, you can see this is gunshot wound A, which is that exit that relates to gunshot wound D entrance on the midline, mid-back.
Okay. And this is the medical treatment you were talking about?
Yeah.
You was at the hospital.
Yes, that's that thoracotomy incision here. And this is the catheter up there.
If you just put page 3 on, okay. Yes. Okay. So, doctor, can you explain for us what these photos are? This is Casey?
This is Casey. These are taken at autopsy. On the left side over here is a view of his back and buttocks, as well as his left arm over here on the left side. And then you can see the entrance gunshot wounds labeled D, E, F, G, H, and I, as well as those more superficial defects of the back. You can see all these smaller little defects around that we talked about as the bullets were going through that intermediary object and then fragmenting.
The fragmentation.
The fragmentation, yes.
Would you then start with and go through gunshot number 1?
Sure. And then just for completion, I'll go over on the right side is a picture of kind of a front view, front and also side of his left side of the chest and part of his head, and the left side of the face, and then the left arm here. You can see that thoracotomy incision on the left side of the chest that the hospital made. And then I've labeled the exit wounds as well. So you can see this is gunshot wound A, B, which is on by the nipple area, and C, which is that more lateral left chest exit. But in addition, you can also see this little bump here, and that is that bullet of the left side of the chest that relates to that gunshot wound of H.
Since we don't have the chart up there, can you associate the entrance wound
Sure.
with what goes to the exit wound?
Sure. So again, all the entrance wounds are on the left side here. So, or on the left picture here. So gunshot wound D is here. That's the entrance for gunshot wound number 1. And it exited gunshot wound A. Okay, and that's on the left side of the chest. And then the second gunshot wound 2, entrance of E, which is that mid back wound here. That exited gunshot wound letter B, which is again near the nipple on the left side of the chest.
Is that right below your marker B? Yes, right there.
Yeah, it's right here. Sorry. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. And then the third gunshot wound on the left side of the back. The entrance is F over here on the left side. And then the exit is C over here on the lateral left side of the chest.
Front, yeah.
And then we have gunshot wound number 4, which is that tangential gunshot wound of the left side of the back. Now it's, you can see it's quite long, but it actually, based on the features of the wound, I could determine that it's going upward. So the bullet actually strikes here first, down here below, like where my pointer is, and then it's going upward. And that does not go into the body. And then gunshot wound H, so that's the entrance of the right lower back. And that corresponds to the bullet that we can see in the photo here. That's on the left side of the chest. And then on the right buttocks is the gunshot wound number 6. And that you can see is designated as letter I. You can see now this is a different picture on the right, but here is Casey's umbilicus or belly button. And this is the left side, just for orientation. And you can see a little bump here under the skin, and that actually also corresponds to a bullet. That's the bullet on the left side of the abdomen that corresponds with the entrance wound I on the right buttock.
Do all those photographs fairly depict the entries that you saw that day?
Yes.
Now, we talked about entrance rooms,
Mhm.
and you spoke about irregularity of the rooms. Can you explain, is that, go ahead, explain that.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Jill needed to walk around.
Okay, doctor. Now, testified in the beginning that you were to determine a cause of manner, correct?
Yes.
And what's your opinions on that?
The cause of death was gunshot wounds of the torso.
Okay. And is that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Briefly, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon.
We've met before and talked before, correct?
Briefly, but yes.
My name is Mark Collins, and along with Ms. Stevens and Mr. Nolder, we represent Jason Meade.
Okay.
I just have a few questions for you and concepts.
Okay.
Sometimes I go too fast, Doctor, so
Okay.
if I do, please let me know, okay?
Okay.
First and foremost, now that you're North Carolina, is it Buckeyes or Wake Forest?
It's hard. I know. I'm still a UNC Chapel Hill fan, to be honest.
Sorry,
They're
okay,
better.
all right. I want to talk in generalities, Doctor.
Okay.
Briefly about topics, okay?
Yes. Okay.
In no way, shape, or form can you ever say the position of the body at the time the bullet entered it, correct?
I cannot say the positions of the shooter and the decedent at the time. When I'm main trajectory, I'm just doing the trajectory of the bullet through the body. I can't tell you the position of the decedent, and I can't tell you the position of the shooter from that.
And you can't tell if the decedent was moving, correct?
I cannot tell.
And you can't tell the order of the shots, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you're not a trajectory expert, you have nothing to do with the order of shots or anything like that, correct?
That's correct.
And you would agree with me, Doctor, that sometimes that the wound that a projectile causes can cause the body to move, correct?
What do you mean?
When a projectile goes in and gives a wound, like to the heart,
Yes.
it can cause the body to react and move.
Correct. Correct.
You can't say how much, you can't say how little.
It could vary from person to person, yes.
So each of the different wounds made by the projectiles could cause the body to move in a different direction.
It's possible.
Now, I want to talk about call it atypical and irregular, correct? The type of wounds.
Sure, yes.
Here there were 6, 5 of them were irregular, correct?
Which one are you saying that's not?
The tangential.
Oh, I may not have described it as that, but it is quite large, so it's still atypical.
You didn't classify that in your report, but
Sure, yes.
in those, is a tangential, explain to ladies and gentlemen of the jury what a tangential wound is.
So some people may call it a graze wound. I use tangential in this case because for me, a graze wound is more just a scrape only of the skin, whereas this wound is a little bit deeper. So you can see the actual soft tissues, the tissues that are under the skin also through this, but it is still more superficial. It's not entering the body. And so I used tangential in this case.
Not a slight graze, but maybe more of a medium graze, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
And with regards to the cause of death, for all of the last hour and 25 minutes, the cause of death was a gunshot wound, correct?
Multiple gunshot wounds, but yes.
3 of them that could have been fatal, correct?
I mean, which ones are you?
You listed in your report that there were 3 potential fatal gunshots.
Did I say that?
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe it was stated.
Overruled. You can answer it.
When you categorize something in your report, Doctor, in the manner or cause of death, right?
Mhm.
In the manner or cause of death, you term it different things, right?
Yes,
Natural versus unnatural, correct?
correct.
Okay, so anything that's unnatural other than suicide is deemed a homicide, correct?
Not true.
I'm sorry. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you mean by homicide.
Homicide is death at the hands of another.
It doesn't have a legal connotation, it has a medical, you're using it in medical terms, correct?
In a forensic medical term, yes.
Very well said, in a forensic medical term, thank you. But you're not using it as a legal term.
Correct.
And in this situation, well, in general, in terms of trying to determine the distance the firearm was from the entrance wound, Sometimes if it's within maybe 3 or 4 feet, at least soot and stippling, correct?
Yes.
Explain to the ladies and gentlemen jury what that is.
Okay. So if a gun is very close, or what we call contact range, meaning the gun muzzle is against the skin, we will see soot. Basically, it's burned gunpowder deposited on the skin around that entrance wound. But you have to be obviously very close to the skin for you to see that. The further away you get from the skin in terms of the gun, you will stop seeing soot, and then you will start to see what we call stippling, gunpowder stippling. And that's the unburned gunpowder that comes also out of the muzzle, and it will basically abrade the skin. So little tiny abrasions or scrapes on the skin that are left there that you can't wash off. And that will be there up to about 2 to 3 feet. It really depends on the firearm. You have to test it to really know.
Thank you. And when you're examining the body, you mentioned it earlier on direct, you do it in the anatomically correct position, correct?
Yes.
And that's kind of based off the Da Vinci anatomically correct.
That's how we diagram and form a report based on that, yes.
Absolutely. And that's only one-dimensional, so to speak.
In what way?
Oh, in terms of, very good, thank you. In that, you can only tell that, you're doing your analysis specifically on how the person's positioned like this, correct? In your anatomy.
I am, but I am giving a trajectory in 3 dimensions.
From the entrance wound to the exit wound.
Yes.
Absolutely. So inside the body, that's what you're following and tracking.
Yes.
Okay, and that's where you talked about the different paths and the fragmentations.
Right.
Okay. But you're not talking about anything entrance and exit in terms of trajectories of where you think the bullet came from, correct?
I don't know where the bullet is before it enters the body, and I don't know where it is after it exits the body.
And that's because you have no idea how the body is positioned.
Exactly.
If the body was positioned exactly like you, then potentially you could say that, right?
Potentially,
You could say where the bullet came from.
potentially, yes. Assuming you know everything else too, the shooter and everything.
Absolutely. But you're not worried about the shooter. You have nothing to do with it.
I have nothing to do with that.
So those anatomically correct diagrams and everything that you said, all 6 were going right to left, back to front, and upward, correct?
Yes.
And that could, depending on how the body was positioned at the time, whether it was bent over, not to kneel, many different consistent scenarios, correct?
That is correct.
And I'd like to do a scenario with you.
Okay.
My understanding is you'd prefer to have someone as demonstrate, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Goodson was 74 inches.
Let me just double check. Yes.
So that's 6 foot 2 inches, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'll have Mr. Nolder come over here.
You can. You're not going to use the weapon, are you?
Mr. Nolder, if you would face that, okay.
Okay.
So,
Do you want to come down?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Come right over, yeah, okay. I'll try to, out of your guys' way. So, doctor, for the record, in theory, this is how you examine the entrance and exit wounds. Okay, so in theory, doctor, if there was an entrance wound right here and it was flat through and it didn't hit anything, correct?
It would be hard to not hit,
Well,
but yes, okay.
we're in hypo world here. Okay, in theory, you would be able to trace a path that say, hey, this is back to front and the direction is straight.
Back to front with no significant upward
Or downward,
or downward deviation.
or no right to
Or
left.
right to left.
No upward or downward deviation, and no right to left. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in this scenario, excuse me, in the report that you have 2 wounds on the right side of the back, correct?
Objection is where he's pointing.
Right back and right buttock?
Right back and right buttocks.
Yes.
You have 2 at the midline, on the left side of the midline, and then you have 2 over here. So kind of 2, 2, and 2. All of them, however, are upward, right to left, back to front. Okay?
Objection is how he has his point.
Overruled.
So in this situation, okay, it would, the consistent, if this was the way it was, with the bullet path coming this way, along the ruler to there. That would yield all the same things, correct? The person would be basically where you are.
What do you mean by?
When the bullet's coming towards it, okay?
Okay.
So basically upward, right to left, correct?
If you're saying like this.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct, right? Okay, so however, if the body is not, stay right there, if the body is positioned like this, then this angle comes over here, correct? The bullet could be coming from that way, correct? It would give you the same results,
You could.
right to left, upward, back to
Yeah.
front.
If I'm in the same, yes.
Yes.
To left, yeah.
Now, if it's positioned this way, keep coming, it would still give you back to front, right to left, and upward, correct?
Yes.
All of those, so this position right here, Mr. Lord, even more, keep coming, that would give you the same results, consistent, with the entrance room being right to left, back to front, and upward, correct? All of those will be consistent based on your expertise.
Yes.
Now, the person could be bent, correct? For the record down. The person could be squatting more, correct? And all of those scenarios would still give you the same results. Upward, right to left, back to front.
Yes. Depending on where you're shooting.
Depending on where the
Yes.
person is,
Yes.
and depending on where the body is.
Yes.
If the body's like this, then the person would have to be over there. If the body's like this, then the person would have to be over to the right. You would agree with that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mulder, you're all set.
I would have preferred the firearm.
And doctor, with every coroner's report, there's a toxicology report attached, correct?
Yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Doctor, thank you so much, and I know you like North Carolina, let's come to the Buckeyes.
I'm actually coming back.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Take all of the documents.
Do you have the computer, Gary?
Josh.
You guys need a break? Let's take our afternoon break. Do not discuss this case among yourselves. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you in your presence. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion on the case until finally submitted to you.
All right.
Doctor, if you can hold on for a second, let the jurors can come out. What?
Just getting through. Luckily, my flight's not till 7.
Okay.
I got time.
those are diagrams where somebody's standing upright,
Yes, yes,
everything's stationary.
correct.
That would be,
And one thing I should say, I'm looking at the body when it's laying down, so I can't really say that he's standing up for these, but
no, I'm saying from the, yeah, like at least the trajectories would be as a
the trajectories are the bullet pathways through the body at, basically at autopsy, so, which I'm examining while they're on the, laying on the table, so.
Hey, Josh, can I use your assistant?
Yes.
Now, let's, place this door, and let's assume this is the threshold.
Okay.
And the door's at a 45-degree angle, all right?
Okay.
Okay. And I'm standing here.
Your Honor, is it
Josh?
okay if she gets off the stand so she can see?
If she needs to, yeah.
Now, Josh, if you could maybe place the pointer, okay? Like I'm standing here at the doorknob.
How do you want me to place it?
Place it so it's in one of the trajectories that Dr. Shepler testified.
Your Honor, she can't testify about trajectories until it hits the body. That's what she just answered his question. No, Your Honor, she can't testify
Overruled, just,
through a door?
just,
Are we? Oh, well, where's the shooter?
Well, I just,
You just mean through the body?
yes, through the body as you were testifying to.
Okay, which gunshot wound?
Which one?
Take it.
Okay.
Just take it.
Okay. So if we have this midline, mid-back, which again, that's, okay. So
Okay.
it would be slightly upward and it's going left.
Right to left.
Yeah, I gotta be over here. So,
Gary, you don't move. She moves.
yeah, please stay still. All right, so it would have to go this way and upward. And I think I appreciate that. But, thereabouts, but it's hard to do this.
Okay. Now, I'm going to move, and then you keep it at that same angle, okay?
Okay,
All right, keep it at that angle. Okay, I'm gonna move slow,
okay.
okay? Got to move, right?
Oh, I don't know if I can move.
Which direction would you have to move?
Again, Your Honor, she,
Overruled.
I guess I don't understand the question.
Okay, here, Josh, would you grab the pointer? You just,
Can you line it up with how you had it before?
Okay.
Thank you.
so you've got that angle, correct?
Yeah,
Is that consistent?
it's hard to do, but it's, yes.
Okay, you ready? Okay, now I'm going to turn. To keep that same angle. In other words, to keep that same angle.
Turn back.
Okay, you ready?
Stop. Stop.
is there a question, Your Honor?
I have no idea what's going on, so.
What angle are you?
Is there a question?
Is there a question, Mr. Schroyer?
Set up the demonstration with what Mr. Collins did.
I asked a
You
question.
still have to ask a question. This is a question and answer.
Have you got positioned where the angle is?
Which
The
angle?
trajectory. Let's say gunshot number 1.
Your Honor, can he stop from using the term trajectory? unless it's inside the body.
I'll sustain as to that.
Thank you.
Okay, and what, you got a position?
One here. Here.
Okay. So if it's going right to left and upward and back to front, this would be that, yeah. Again, I don't know where the shooter is, so this is.
Correct, I understand. It's where it entered my body.
Right.
But that,
Again, Your Honor, is that enough? Move on.
Mr. Schreier, move on.
Sit and move on.
Doctor, you can come back.
Doctor, the only thing I'm trying to demonstrate here.
Again, is there a question?
Just,
Is that once you line up the angle, okay, and there's starting to be movement like this, to keep that same thing, you would have to move with the movement. The angle changes, at least out here, for me to keep it straight.
There's a lot of variables in terms of, we've got the door, we've got the shooter. I don't know where the shooter is. I don't know where the decedent is positioning in time, in space and time. Yes,
Doors moving,
correct,
okay, gun could be moving,
possible.
okay, shooter moving.
I don't know any of that information, yes, right, from the autopsy findings alone.
And it's the same thing with Mr. Collins's demonstration, right?
Correct, well, correct.
I have nothing further.
Briefly, Your Honor.
yes.
Doctor, you ever done an autopsy of your 1500 using a door to go through it?
No, well, no.
Have you ever done an autopsy with pretending the person's moving?
Objection.
Overruled.
I've not, going back to your first question, what was,
Have you ever had to do an autopsy when you had to get through the body through a door?
no, I've never done an
Have
autopsy
you ever
through a
done an
door.
autopsy when you had the person pretending to move?
No,
Overruled.
In 1,500 autopsies, you were never asked that question, ever, correct? About having to do that demonstration, correct? And anytime you've testified as an expert,
no,
you're confined to when the path of the projectile, when it enters the body, where it goes and potentially leaves, correct?
yes,
That's where all your expertise ends, right there, correct?
correct.
Thank you so much, doctor. Have a safe flight.
All right, you can step down. Guess you can leave the laser pointers.
Yes, I'm gonna take my pen off.
You can call your next witness. You raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? I do. Have a seat. Pull yourself up close to the microphone.
Afternoon, sir. Would you state your name and occupation for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Santino Williams, Sontino Williams. I'm with Columbus Police Department Crime Scene Search Unit.
How long have you been a police officer?
22 years.
And have you always been assigned to crime scene search unit?
No, sir.
you've done other things in your career as a police officer?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been with the crime scene search unit?
3 years, a little over 3 years.
Okay. And typically, when you're working in your capacity as a crime scene search detective, you work with a team.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you part of the team that responded on December 4th, 2020 to 3996 Estates Place?
Yes, sir.
Is that in Columbus, Ohio and Franklin County?
Yes, sir.
Who else responded besides you?
Sergeant Stanley, Detective Gibson, and Detective Ball.
And in the course of processing the scene, did you have an assigned task?
Yes, sir.
And what was that?
Collection of evidence.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, pull out. Again with State's Exhibit 2A, B, C, D, and F. Let me put those in front of you. If you would, those are envelopes that are all labeled, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Who does the labeling of those?
I think I did in this case.
Okay. And what is in each of those? Well, I'll start with 2A.
Spent casing for a 5.56.
Okay. And
Same for all of them.
so they all are spent casings?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me, sorry, should have brought it up with me. Where were those collected from?
Those were right outside the fence in the grassy area.
Show you what's been marked as 2GG. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph
Yes, sir.
and what is depicted?
Evidence markers 1 through 6 and 7.
Okay. And when you say evidence markers, what do you mean by that?
That's the markers we use to, or the cones we use to mark evidence.
Okay, and who placed those there?
Either I or John Ball, Detective Ball.
And markers 1 through 6 marked what?
Those are the casing, the 5.56
Okay.
casings.
You noted that there's also a marker 7. And
Correct.
what was that marker?
That was blood swabs we took from the sidewalk.
Blood swabs?
Yes.
Okay. That publishes,
You may.
We're, the blood swab from the sidewalk, were you given information as to how the shooting victim was removed from the scene?
Yes, sir.
And would that have been on that route?
Correct.
So these are all shell casings over here, right?
Yes, sir.
That you collected.
Yes.
And I guess let's talk a moment about the collection process. When an item is collected as possible evidence in a case, walk us through the mechanics of that, if you would, please.
From the beginning, from the start, the call, or so whatever detective from robbery or felonious assault or homicide calls us out, they go to the scene, they assess the scene first. They see if there was any video, any neighbors, any witnesses, any family members, anyone else that they may want to talk to and figure out, give us a direction to start in. And they then call us to the scene with information to help guide us to begin starting the evidence process. So we depend heavily on their information to get us started in the right direction.
Okay, and you know, mechanically, the first thing that you do is, in terms, I mean, before anything is touched, is to document its location, well, with your evidence codes, right?
No, sir.
Okay,
For-
sorry, I got ahead of you.
That's all right. The first thing we do is we take overall pictures of the scene and surrounding scene.
Well, but pictures also are taken once the cones are put in place, is that right?
Correct.
So at the point that, you know, photograph 2G was taken, those casings had not been disturbed other than you'd place cones next to them, documenting and identifying their location.
Correct.
And following all, I mean, it may be, you know, following all the photograph taking, that's when you physically start collecting the evidence?
Oh, we start immediately after the photos. We start coning and then photograph again, and then we actually check back with the scene detective and see if we find any other evidence before we start that process.
Right. So, and the scene detective is the one who makes the final determination as to whether it's going to be collected.
He's satisfied. Correct.
State's exhibit. It contains a number of items.
Okay.
Remove those from the bag. This will start with that one.
Okay.
This is State's Exhibit 2G. And what is that?
It's a semi-auto handgun, 45
Okay,
M&P.
all right.
Can you hear me?
Slide it up there.
All right.
And it's got a zip lock on it. That's to show that it's empty and make it safe.
Make it safe for our property room.
Okay, and who put the zip lock on it, do you know?
I did.
Okay, that would be part of your collection process once you took control of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead with. It'd be 2H, and what is that?
It's the magazine that came out of the gun?
That was in the gun, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then 2I,
Live rounds out of the gun?
okay, so were those, they weren't loose like that when you collected them, is that
No, no, sir.
They were actually in the magazine and the gun?
Correct.
Okay, and I think within that bag there, you've got like one live round that is wrapped separately, and what was that?
Correct. The chambered round.
Okay, so that was the one that was actually in the chamber of the gun.
Correct.
Okay, and the final one is 2J. Did you place, well, which contains what?
2 spent rounds,
And did you
and the
place-
projectiles.
Were they in that condition when you collected them?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you place them in that box?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know how they got into that box?
When the gun was test fired, I believe that's when they placed them in the box.
And that's common practice, isn't it, that they test fire with the ammunition that was collected with the gun?
Yes, sir.
Show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 2 Triple C. You recognize that?
Yes, sir.
And what does that photograph depict?
That's the picture of the semi-auto handgun, 45.
And it's the cone there is cone 9?
Cone 9. Yes, sir.
And who placed that cone there?
Either I or John Ball,
Okay.
Detective Ball.
I published this, Your Honor.
What's that?
I published this.
Yes.
So that was the state it was in when, before you collected it, is that right? Oh.
Correct.
If that helps. So the magazine is actually in the gun, the bullets are in the gun.
Correct.
I want to show you what's been marked as 2Y. Recognize what that photograph depicts.
Yes, sir. It looks like the more cones and evidence marked there.
Okay. Is that the kitchen floor there?
It is.
And is the gun depicted in the foreground there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know what cone 10 was marking?
Projectile.
Okay. So that was a projectile, and when we say projectile, is that spent bullet? Is that, would that be the
Correct.
same thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Double them up here. 2K, would you recognize what that is?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
This is the spent projectile.
I'm sorry?
Projectile?
And is that the one that was marked 10 in the photograph?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And are you the one that packaged it up this way?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Take this for a second. May I publish this, Your Honor? So that's the projectile that was collected from this location.
Correct.
And number 11, what does that mark?
Looks like it is the do-rag from here.
Okay. What's a do-rag?
It's just something you wear on your hair.
Okay. Two triple E. Recognize what's depicted there.
Yes, sir.
What is depicted there?
That is the do-rag and earbuds
Okay.
beside it.
Closer up picture of them.
Yes, sir. I publish this.
Yes.
Were the earbuds collected?
No, sir. No, sir.
Did you take note of them when you were processing the scene?
And what do you mean, take note of it?
I mean, they show up in the picture. Did you make any inquiry about them with the scene detective?
I did. I asked
Tell us about that.
if he wanted any other evidence from the floor. I actually stopped Detective Gibson, which we don't normally do, from taking her photos, and brought him back in the room and asked if he wanted anything else on the floor. And he said no, so.
Overruled.
That's it.
He told you no,
Correct.
just collect the do-rag.
He said he did, yes, correct.
Okay. State's exhibits 2 triple B and 2 triple G. Do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
Yes, sir. It's the microwave in the kitchen on the east side of the kitchen, I believe.
Okay, and there's a marker 13 there,
Yes, sir.
and why was that marker placed there?
There was a projectile in the microwave,
Okay.
embedded.
Was that projectile collected?
Yes, sir.
Show you, it's been marked as 2N. Recognize that.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
The projectile embedded in the microwave.
Okay, so this is kind of this is State's Exhibit 2 triple B, and it's a broader shot that shows the kind of the location of the microwave in the kitchen. Is that right?
Correct.
And then 2GGG is a closer shot, and that shows the damage to the microwave.
Correct.
And who, you recovered the bullet, right?
I believe so.
And was the bullet recovered from this area right in here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me back up for a second. When under the policies and procedures of the Columbus Police Department, when a weapon is recovered, is there a form that's filled out when you recover it?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you 2GGG. Recognize that form.
Yes, sir.
Front and back.
Yes, sir.
And what is that for?
That's recovered firearm form.
And is that, and who had the responsibility of filling that out?
I did.
Okay. And so that again documents the recovery of the weapon, correct?
Yes, sir.
And does it also document the condition of the weapon, time of recovery?
I think the time, maybe? I don't think it does.
Well, I made a poor question there. When I say condition, you know, does it document whether it was loaded, whether it wasn't?
Yes.
loaded?
Yes, sir.
And this weapon will tell us what was its condition in that regard.
It was loaded with 15 total rounds, one in the chamber.
Okay. And on the back, there's a graphic there that you can note so that we know exactly where the bullets were, right?
Correct.
Okay. Show you 2GGS. That photograph.
Looks like north wall projectile.
Okay. When you say north wall projectile.
Projectile embedded in the north wall
Okay.
of the kitchen.
All right. And that's depicted in that photograph.
Correct.
2O. Was that projectile recovered?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what is 2O?
That's projectile that was embedded in the north wall.
That was the projectile that was recovered?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Get it any lighter, but up here is, you can actually see the projectile.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Show you 2GGP. Recognize what that photograph depicts?
It looks like the side door.
The inside side door?
Correct.
And does it show anything in the door?
Keys?
Okay. And was that the condition the door was in when you were there on December 4th?
Yes, sir.
And the keys were in that position?
Yes, sir.
So again, that photograph would have been taken before anything was moved or collected
Correct.
in that regard.
Correct.
All right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. And if you recall, was that basically the position of the door when you?
I don't recall.
All right. Detective, there were other items that you collected as well, or were there not?
Yes, sir.
Um, The photographs that I've shown you, are they fair and accurate representations of how things appeared to you that day?
Yes, sir.
When you were processing this scene, did you, if you recall, did you note the presence of a bag of Subway sandwiches?
Document? No, not documented.
No, did you note the presence of it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's in some of the photos.
Yeah, I mean, you guys saw them.
Yes.
At the time, did you know that they had any significance to the?
No, sir.
Okay. So they were not as carefully documented as the items that you collected?
No, sir.
And of course, had you collected them, you know, being food, is there,
We can't, perishable items, we can't turn them in our property room.
your property room wouldn't accept those?
No, sir.
Okay. So, the protocol for your department, you know, once emergency activities and such are completed at a scene, is to maintain it until you guys get there?
Correct. To the best of their ability. I mean,
Sure. And to your knowledge, was that done here?
yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Detective.
Any cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Okay.
Good afternoon, Detective Williams.
Good afternoon.
My name is Caitlin Stevens, and I, along with my co-counsel, Mr. Collins and Mr. Nolder, represent Mr. Meade in this action. I tend to go a little fast. I'm sure Ms. Cutter will yell at me. If at any time I do go too fast or you don't understand my question, please just ask me to rephrase.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You've been on the force for 22 years now?
Correct.
And prior to your assignment as a detective with CSSU, you've worked patrol, correct?
Correct.
You've encountered probably hundreds, if not thousands, of arrests in your 22 years on the force.
Correct.
And in those hundreds, if not thousands of arrests, you've encountered many different people. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Some people are compliant, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Others are non-compliant, correct?
Correct.
And at the time they are non-compliant, Detective Williams, you're not trying to figure out why they're non-compliant, correct?
Correct.
You don't have time to do that, right?
No, ma'am.
I'm sure in the arrests that you've encountered, you've had people run away from you.
Yes, ma'am.
Fair to say that when a person looks at you and takes off running, you take that as a police officer as fleeing, correct?
Correct.
Relevance of that with this witness.
May we approach?
Oh, yes, go ahead. Jill? May continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think I left off with you, Detective Williams, that fair to say when a person looks at you and takes off running, you as a police officer take that as they are fleeing, correct?
Correct.
I want to talk to you about what your training tells you to do in that situation. You've been trained to pursue that person, right?
Correct.
The best practice typically is for you to radio or air what you can at that time, right?
Yes, ma'am.
While you've been on patrol, you were required to wear your body-worn camera, right?
Correct.
As a detective, you don't have a body-worn camera on today, right?
No, ma'am.
And that's by regulation, correct?
Correct.
The reality of the situation is, Detective, by directive, some branches of law enforcement do not have to wear body-worn cameras, right?
Correct.
They're not equipped with body-worn cameras.
Correct.
And when you engage with a person on a foot chase, Detective Williams, you may yell commands to encourage compliance, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Verbal commands are given to de-escalate the situation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
In your experience, Detective Williams, a person with their back to you can still be a threat, correct?
Correct.
So even if someone is not facing you, they can still be a threat, right?
Correct.
What if they have a gun, Detective Williams? Are they a threat at that point,
Yes, ma'am.
even with their back to you?
They can be.
Tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury why so.
Because you can still point a gun not facing the person.
And you've had experience with this before, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And your training teaches you, Detective Williams, to shoot to stop the threat, right?
Correct.
Now I want to circle back to your role in CSSU on December 4th of 2020. You said yours and Detective John Ball's job was to place cones by items that could potentially have evidentiary value, right?
Correct.
You place cones near the item with the evidentiary value so the person who are taking photographs can photograph that piece of evidence with that particular cone, right?
Correct.
And then your job is to gather the evidence that you placed by the cone, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you're done clearing a scene and when you're done photographing and collecting all of that evidence, you take the cones with you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You did that here in this situation, correct?
Correct.
You didn't leave them up until December 17th to allow the FBI to come out and have those cones there, right?
No, ma'am.
You definitely took the cones with you, right?
I believe so.
You also communicated with your team where you found these items, and somebody from the team went ahead and imposed those items on that scene sketch, correct?
Took the pictures, yes.
Yes. And you identified those evidentiary items by code number, correct?
Correct.
You did not place a cone next to the Nissan Versa that was parked on Estates, right?
No, ma'am.
And that's because you had absolutely nothing to do with the car, right?
Correct.
You were not in charge of the car that day, correct?
No, ma'am.
The scene detective, Detective Mounts, was in charge of the car, right?
I believe so.
He was a scene detective who responded on December 4th, 2020.
Correct.
And he's an experienced detective, yes?
Correct.
With respect to CSSU detectives on the scene, you said that it was yourself, correct?
Yes.
John Stanley? Yes, Sergeant Stanley?
Yes, ma'am.
Detective John Ball?
Yes, ma'am.
Not Yvonne Talaferro, correct?
Correct.
Yvonne Talaferro did not respond to the scene on December 4th, 2020.
Correct.
And your job is to contain the scene and to continue taking pictures of the scene until you guys are all finished, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember what time you finished that day?
No.
It was later on in the evening, right?
Yes.
If I told you between 6:30 and 7:30, you wouldn't have any reason to disagree with that, would you?
No, ma'am.
I want to talk to you, Detective Williams, about shell casings. You've had experience firing guns before, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
You're trained in firearms operations, right?
Correct.
When you fire a weapon, typically the way that the casings eject are to the right, correct?
Correct.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Thank you so much, Detective Williams, for your time. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you.
Direct.
Detective Williams, you're not trained to shoot anybody that runs from you, are you?
No, sir.
You're not trained to shoot anyone that you know possesses a gun, are you?
No, sir.
In fact, your training is that shooting only happens when there is an immediate threat of harm to you or others.
Yes. Method, threat, and opportunity. Method, threat, and opportunity.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Yeah, thank you. Detective Williams, you're trained to shoot when that gun comes pointed towards you, correct?
Stop the threat.
Correct. I apologize. You're trained to shoot to stop the threat when the gun comes towards you, correct?
Correct.
And that's because when the gun comes towards you, you are in immediate danger of serious physical harm or death, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
You can just leave everything there, and you can step down. If
Thank you, Your Honor.
gloves off, I got a trash can over here.
Your Honor, we're out of witnesses today.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna take our break today. Do not discuss this case among yourselves. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty not to form and express an opinion on the case until it is finally submitted to you. If you can come in, where are we gonna put them on Monday?
On Monday,
Do we have?
Rachel real quick.
Yeah, every Monday we get a big new jury pool in downstairs, and they're all checking in, like we had to bring you guys in to a different courtroom. So I'm trying to figure out where in the.
Courtroom 2A.
All right, so if you could check in Monday morning at 8:45. Hopefully we can get started at 9. Everyone have an enjoyable weekend.
All rise.